I am going to be covering resolutions and challenges, or of challenges. So what I've done is I've highlighted resolutions and challenges. Now I'll just go ahead and read it for you. We want to discuss the challenges that are likely to be encountered in designing and implementing the activities described in the work plan and approaches that will be used to resolve such challenges, which would include anticipated delays to the local legislative process, limited EMS authority, change in advisory members, delivery systems of care that are primarily volunteer or privately run. There may be no pediatric specialty hospitals in the state or a specific region. There's lack of resources to support pediatric educational opportunities or lack of funding for pediatric equipment. And next steps and plans to overcome those specific challenges. So what does that mean? If you have challenges, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to get a grant. They just need to know what your challenges are and how you plan on overcoming those specific challenges. So the resolution of challenges has a potential points of 10 points. Now, one thing I want to make pretty clear about this is where your grant really could define you. So make it personal. If you have challenges specific to your state that another state may not have, put them in there. But we also need to make sure you put in there how you're going to, at least your plan of attack on how you're going to resolve those specific challenges. Recommended pages are anywhere between 4 and 6. And then whatever attachments you want to put in there. So there are, in the FOA, and resolution of challenges on page 26, if you want to look. But here are some possible challenges according to the FOA, like we had read before. Limited EMS authority. We discussed yesterday at lunch about your EMS system not having any bite, not having any teeth. How can you overcome that? There might be some people in here that say their EMS system or their EMSC system has too much bite and too much regulatory. So it's finding that perfect balance. Change in advisory members. That happens to everybody. How we possibly meet that specific challenge. Or it may not happen to you. So if you don't have a change in advisory members, if you've had the same people for years, don't put them in there because it's not necessarily your specific challenges. Again, right to your state, right to what's important to you. So this is what I want to do. Let's have you team up. Person next to you, group up, get in pairs, and I want you to discuss what your challenges of your state would be. Does that make sense? So the question was, would I bring up a challenge that I could not address, like low number of physicians in a state?
Right.
What do we think?
I would say yes, because you had pediatric specialty hospital there, and if, I'd like to know how we would fix that. So by saying that we have a healthcare shortage, and that's a national issue, and it's a challenge that's recognized nationally.
But if it's not your work plan to address it, that's my question.
Well, working on some of the performance measures strengthen the infrastructure for pediatric care in the state, which you could argue that it would make your state a more attractive option for pediatric specialists. So, I mean, it's not as simple as saying, here, I'll give you some ESC money if you come and be a doctor here, but by making the environment better for pediatric care.
There we go. Twist.
Yeah, just another suggestion. There's lots and lots of groups out there doing those things. You can show that you are working toward that just by being a part of that program. I joined a medical homework group, and once in a while, you can actually say something on the teleconference. But it keeps me involved in what they're doing, and I can show in my grant group that that's something that we do, involved in that work.
But that is having a component in the problem. If there's a problem that you don't have anything to do, would you do it?
I'm not sure I understand your
If there was no infrastructure in your state for medical home, would you take on
I
that?
can't
whole problem
imagine that
from-
your state somewhere, there's not some champions that are talking about.
Well, for that
Family.
topic, but for
Yeah.
another topic, that, like, in Tennessee, I would work on physician recruitment, and I have. But I have a whole infrastructure to work on, with
I
partners.
understand what you're saying.
If there's not a partner, I wouldn't identify a problem in a grant. Especially if it was something humongous, a big hairy deal.
Even then, you could identify partners and say in the grant, I plan to seek out partnerships with these people.
That's if you want to take on that bigger project.
You can at least just put it in there and address it and say, I'm going to contact. Even other EMSC program managers, you can say, well, who did you contact for this, or who do you have in your state, and then look at, you know, if you got this in Tennessee, I can then look at South Carolina, you know, it just takes a Google search or, you know. I personally, I would put it in there and then address it simply and say, I'll call around and get contacts or reach out to different firms. I mean, just let them know the challenges and then try and work on it. It's not saying you're gonna accomplish it and do it, you know, it's just saying it's here and we're looking at it.
Cynthia,
Part of the challenges, at least, I get to speak louder.
please.
Yes.
Part of the challenges we have is revolving door leadership, politically or otherwise. Somebody's always going to check. And
I didn't know you were from Illinois.
they go there, everything makes it a little bit more subtle. So what we have to write is, and change the names of the people we work with. But we understand that's always going to be an issue. And that we always have to keep educating the population, either in an elected manner or in our government agencies. And it's ongoing. But it's something that we can work at and put in the grant, and it's the reality.
But you also acknowledging.
Exactly.
Somebody said that also acknowledges. Don, you have something?
Well, what you say for resolutions and challenges, these are specific to what we're writing, so I'm not gonna take on something I can't control. I'm not gonna put something, I mean, this resolution discuss challenges that are likely to be encountered in designing and implementing activities described in the work plan. The work plan being for this grant, if there's only 15 pediatric physicians in my state, yes, that would be something that might impact the grant. But if there was something outside of that, I don't know if I take that on. I really have to consider some of the nuances to it. But the way I'm looking at it is just, these resolutions are for what we're writing now. Am I correct in thinking that?
Right, but then you can make the correlation between everything being connected and that, A has to do with B, even if B's not important.
How much of a spider web am I going to have to weave here? How many of these things am I going to have to be concerned with outside of that?
Dee, what do you think?
We're dealing with, right here, who are the state partnership managers here. These are managers that have been working in their state systems for quite some time, or even for a short period of time. Category 3 continuing education. So you do have some problems that you've experienced over the last year, some no's. So the goal is to bring that to the table. This is what we've experienced, this is what we plan to try to do to resolve it. It's a grant, and it's a goal. It's showing that you thought it through. So if medical home appears to one grantee as a challenge, because that's what they are considering as part of their project, then they can address that. They can state that. But if you are thinking just of a performance measures and you don't see any correlation to the two, you don't have to. But as some of them are pointing out, medical home is a part of the project. It's a continuum of care. It's an approach. It's a model. So if you think that's a project, I mean, that's a challenge. You've dealt with that challenge. You want the reviewers to know you've dealt with it, and this is your plan to try to resolve it over the next 2 years, then most definitely include it. It shows you, you're thinking of potential barriers and problems you experience. For, I guess a good example is, Tony could probably describe pediatric medical recognition. And I hope this is not, going on a tangent, but that whole experience of trying to implement that project, all those challenges, she could actually line it up one by one. But she also has resolution and how she plans to continue to recognize the hospitals. So it's looking at it based on what you didn't put, you're correct, but it's also looking at forecast potential problems. Does that feel like a bigger web? Or does it feel a little bit more?
I can always plead ignorance, I mean, that would be one thing, it's just, well, I didn't know. But I just, how much more do you have to look at and how, so fair to say a 4-year forecast is a fair thing? So 4 years from
And
this
taking into consideration
point,
what
like
you're
next year, and so kind of cut it off there, We're not doing the strategic 10-year plan. We're doing just what, so that would help narrow it down to 4 years. Okay.
Joe?
Well, there's one example here that I was going to mention, which is a lack of no pediatric hospitals in the state. It's one of the examples you have on your slides. And it's not something I'm going to fix, okay? But it is an issue that I have to deal with. And I got to try to work with other people to try to figure out how to deal with that lack of resources. So I think that if it's something that I'm going to be spending any time on as part of my work as EMSC program manager, then my guess is it probably ought to be something in here as both an objective and task associated.
Pediatric hospital, objective and tasks, there's nothing in Montana.
Just thinking of what Joe says, we can't build a pediatric hospital in the state. I'm thinking about what Idaho has done with Utah. So that's a challenge in Idaho. So what they've done is they've got an agreement with the Utah primary children's. So that is how they have resolved the problem. So it's thinking outside the box. Instead of we're going to build a hospital, how can you take care of those kids still? So there's other ways to do it.
There's also ensuring that the out-of-state transport is taken care of, depending on where you're going to ship those kids. If they have to go to a higher level pediatric specialty hospital, how they're going to do it. Then you can address other things with, on protocols and things like that. Good question.
Good solution.
What was that?
Good solution.
Good solutions. It's all I have. Does anybody have a specific challenge they would like to discuss? I think this is good dynamic with this group because we're getting a whole bunch of different perspectives, and maybe someone else could have something to offer. So does anyone have a challenge they would like to share with the group?
We will always have a challenge, any of the things that say that you want us to change a statute or code. If that's not the flavor of the month in the state, it'll always be a challenge. But the way to resolve it, the education component, for example, we will never change our rules and regs back. I shouldn't say never say never. But we will more than likely not change our rules back to include specifically pediatrics as a continuing ed. However, we recognize pediatric continuing education is important. So we will increase the availability of pediatric education hours for EMS providers to have. So the education is there and they'll get it. Will I have met the standard by which the national folks have set up the standard? No. But will I have met the fact that we have a gap in pediatric education? Yes.
If I can interject on that, it's a perfect opportunity for the family to make some of those miles, to make it be personal, to make it a very passionate issue, to get to the legislators, because you can say, this is what I think we should do. And they can say, thank you very much for your good kindness and whatnot, or your background, being like, this is what we need to do, and be very passionate and take the move that point forward.
And they'll say thank you very much.
And they'll say thank you very much. And then the parent will say, I don't think you hear what I'm saying.
Yes, there's no national standard. And,
Yeah.
it's like Tony's protocols have to be evidence-based.
right?
So Tony, how would we balance that to meet the John's?
Keep that.
How would we balance that density, population?
Well, I don't know how you would balance it, but what I know is that that's something that I have to address in my challenges, because the expectation is the same for me as it is for him. But I've got, 600 hospitals and 1,200 EMS agencies and many, many miles to cover, and it can't be done with the same dollar. You just can't, and so that has to be something that's addressed, and it's going to take us longer to get there than should some other states that can take the same amount of resources and visit a dozen hospitals, a couple of EMS agencies.
Don Dragon will give you.
Yeah.
In a state.
No, it should be. I agree. I mean, when I'm dealing with 97, agencies and 500 ambulances compared, that's like one county in Tony's state.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, and I think for the $7 million that all of the, the EMS agencies get, that can even be doubled and tripled. I mean, $7 million to Congress is, a Humvee. It's not, $7 million. We're doing all this at $7 million, okay. And I think he's right. I think density might be an issue. You've got thousands and thousands of hospitals and agencies. You need more people.
I would encourage, just from having been around since DIRT, to, when you develop your systems, to try to think forward of challenges and address those when you're developing the system. Like, I knew I couldn't cover a whole state in education. Our state's 12 hours wide. So in our rules and regs, the pediatric facilities, they have to have a CRP, an EMSC coordinator. That's part, just like a trauma coordinator or a radiologist or whatever, that's a position they have to fund to do education. So where we, in hindsight, we weren't strong enough in our rules and regs on quality improvement, where that's kind of where we need to go next is we've got a system in place, but we're not really measuring whether or not anything's changed. So including that in your overall plan to help. Does that make any sense?
How did you made this a mandate?
Yeah, we have rules and regulations for our facility recognition.
Do you have every hospital have an EMSC?
No, every hospital has to designate themselves as a part of the system, but the level 1 comprehensive regional pediatric centers have to have an EMSC coordinator. And then they're gonna, but we didn't have, what's this new wording where each hospital for the pediatric readiness? A coordinator at each hospital for pediatric readiness. We don't have that, so we're gonna start incorporating that in our next rules revisions.
Good. It's good dialogue. Eric?
Maybe some of you guys who have dealt with the hospitals a lot more than I have can help me with this. I'm housed in the EMS bureau, so when I try to approach hospitals, I get blown off. I mean, what does EMS want? Sometimes I pay attention if I'm holding Roscoe tape, but what recommendations do you guys have to?
I took my parents. I didn't do anything. I just educated my parents that need to back up. It was my parents that passed legislation that resulted in those regulations.
I would ask for your card because the Emergency Nurses General Assembly is next month, and I'll take it to the Idaho delegation and have them contact you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Do you have a hospital association?
We do, and I work with them for the trauma registry. And they're very nice right there in their office, but that doesn't necessarily translate to friendliness out in the hospitals yet.
It takes time.
Even if you could, the previous EMSC manager before me that was in your Taffy notes, She went around and did like a site review, a very informal site review with hospitals, just going in, and she took somebody from the MCH Bureau and Division of Injury and Violence Prevention. She went and she took a trauma manager, and they just went to different hospitals trying to explain EMSC program initiatives and asking the hospitals what are they doing. Now, they couldn't hit every hospital in the state, but you know, that may be the thing to get to that one hospital, and word of mouth spreads fast. So, and once they understand you're not here to, you know, wave a big stick at them or do something to them, hopefully they'll be more friendly connection.
I think when they do that crossover with JCO and the Citizen Residence Project, that's going to help a ton in relationships with hospital associations. Because you're telling them what's in it.
I know Erin's in a state where they don't yet have a trauma system, and I think that's a real challenge in and of itself, because probably our biggest entree in our office is through our trauma designation program, where even though we don't have any specific rules regarding care of pediatric trauma patients, our trauma program people incorporate pediatric-specific stuff into their consultation and designation stuff, so that even though it's unofficial, it still gets the job done. And I know you guys are working on a trauma system now, so I think that's going to probably help a lot when that gets done.
Well, I was just going to say, I guess that lets out one of my ideas too, because I would say our trauma coordinator within our office and all of her contacts with all the trauma coordinators in all the hospitals has been really a big help to me. So, and I go to most of their meetings and whatnot, so if I have something coming up that I need them for, you know, I ask. And the other one is our hospital preparedness coordinator, and same thing, I go to most of their meetings, and I've gotten to know their contacts for all their hospital preparedness coordinators in the hospitals, and that's been really helpful too. If you don't have a trauma system, that's not much help.
Any other challenges? Okay. Good stuff. Just want to talk about outlining your challenge section. So they're based on your methodology and your work plan, but you can organize them in several different ways. It doesn't have to be one specific way. It's what's comfortable for you. It's what flows with your particular work plan. So you can do it by goals and objectives, or you can do it by performance measure, 71 through 80, or you can just do a bullet list. So what I want to do is give you about 20 minutes to write, and then we'll come back and see if there's any examples, if anyone wants to talk about it, and we'll go from there.